Friday, everybody. I'm Jen Latta, filling in for Molly Kieram. Skip Bayless here in studio with me. Stephen A. joining us from Toronto. How's everybody doing? Holiday weekend.
Good morning. Good morning, Jen. Welcome to the show. What's up, Skip? How you doing, big boy?
Doing all right, but I gotta say, if you had been in studio today, I don't think Molly's missing a day with you in studio. That's just me. That's just me. So I think Jen might be a little more objective about me here in the studio, so maybe I have a little better chance at this show today.
Well, only couple of things that I'd like to say is that it's no surprise that the ladies prefer to be with me in studio as opposed to you. But the exception would be the lovely Ernestine. And last time I checked, as long as you have her, that is all you are supposed to need, Skip Bayless.
That is correct. Truer words have never been spoken on this show before.
Then stop whining. All right. Then stop whining.
I am loving the love fest we are starting with. It's a good way to kick off the holiday weekend. Let's get to our topics. The Warriors able to stave off elimination and force a Game 6 back in OKC on Saturday night. Steph Curry led Golden State with 31 points, while the Thunder got 71 combined from Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Not much help from anyone else, though. So, Stephen A., what was the difference last night?
Well, I think the difference last night is that you got surprising production from frontline players. Andrew Bogut had 15 points, 14 rebounds. Maurice Spates scored 9 quick points in the second quarter, ultimately finished with 14 points. That's 29 points of production. You pretty much did not expect even half that much from your front line. So the fact that the big boys showed up and produced, obviously that went a long way. Steph Curry caught fire at the right time, particularly in the fourth quarter. Give him credit where credit is due. He and Klay Thompson were not that stellar from the field, 9 for 28 for 21 respectively, combining 5 for 17 from three-point range. They could do better. They know they could do better, but ultimately they did what was necessary. You look at a Draymond Green, for example. He wasn't stellar himself offensively, but he did have a double-double. He did grab rebounds. He did block shots. He did make sure that his presence was felt. And the energy that you needed, you got from the individuals that you needed to get it from. So as a result of that, Golden State definitely was able to stave off elimination for at least one game and escape and on their home court with this victory. But I'll remind everybody that Kevin Durant had 40, but it was on 31 shots. That Russell Westbrook was doing his thing, but he was struggling from the field himself. I don't anticipate that they're going to struggle that much back home at Oklahoma City. They were still in this game when Russell Westbrook and those boys forced Steph Curry to turn that ball over, Skip, late in the fourth quarter, and they went down court. Had Kevin Durant hit that three-pointer, it would have pulled OKC within 3 with 30-plus seconds left, which means they would have had a chance to win this game. So I think about the way that they struggled from the field. I think about the fact that Steven Adams had 2 fouls within the first 3 minutes. I think about the fact that they were anything less than stellar and far removed from their performances in Game 3 and 4 back in OKC, yet they were still in position to win this game. There's no dissipation in confidence whatsoever. I anticipate that the Oklahoma City Thunder, albeit with the pressure mounting on their shoulders because they need to win Game 6 and avoid a return to the Oracle for Game 7, I just believe that the way they're looking right now, their confidence hasn't waned one bit. They're confident they can get the job done, and I anticipate that that's exactly what their mindset is. So to me, the Golden State Warriors are still in trouble because they would need to play better than they did last night, because I have no doubt that OKC is going to play better than they did last night.
I'll buy that. I'll buy your conclusion. I'll buy that Golden State wasn't particularly impressive last night. I frankly didn't think Steph Curry was all that much Steph Curry last night, though he did some big little things, as you point out, late that turned the tide, or at least held off the rally. Now, back to Jen's question. The biggest difference last night to me was Steve Kerr and the changes and adjustments that he did finally make in this series. And I'm going to say this again. I thought after Games 3 and 4, Steve Kerr took excessive criticism from all quarters. I thought bordered on brutal criticism. And so today, I'm going to give him some credit for what I thought was a seismic shift in strategy in this series. Turned the tables last night, may not turn them in Game 6, but it was significant last night that Steve Kerr abandoned his, as they called it, the death lineup, his small ball lineup that devastated the NBA for all of this season, for most of these playoffs. The small ball death lineup that Billy Donovan has been destroying with his small ball lineup featuring Serge Ibaka at center. Steve Kerr last night fought small with big, with Andrew Bogut, who played 30 minutes of that game and came up huge for Golden State. As you know, game-changing, 14 rebounds, 15 points on 7 of 9 shots from a guy in the past. You've called him, I've used your nickname too, Bogus. He was Bogut last night. He was a difference in the game, but that strategy was the difference in the game. And to me, that coupled with what Steve Kerr did early in the fourth quarter, you want to talk about some gutsy coaching move? How about let's keep Steph and Draymond and Bogut on the bench for the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter while the backups, the Livingstons, the Barbosas, the Spates, went on a 15-8 run that changed that game and gave Golden State a cushion that it would need. Because you're right, Kevin Durant had a wide-open look that could have cut it to 3 with 30 seconds left, and then who knows what would have happened. I still figure Steph would have done whatever was necessary to save the day. But my point is, if we're going to bash Steve Kerr, let's applaud what he did last night, because it took some guts and it took some savvy, and I thought he coached last night like he was the coach of the year. Your thoughts on that?
Well, let me tell you something. I don't disagree with the facts that you've spewed about Steve Kerr and what he did last night, but I take exception to the notion that Steve Kerr has been somehow victimized. The fact of the matter is, I would think that Steve Kerr has received the longest honeymoon of any coach out there. This guy comes in, takes over for Mark Jackson, inherits a relatively finished product as far as I'm concerned. He's got a great owner in Lacob. He's got a great consultant in Jerry West. You know, GM in Myers. The foundation is as perfect as you could possibly imagine it, and he finished the deal and deserved credit for it. His health becomes a challenge. Ultimately, he misses the first 43 games of this year. Luke Walton steps in, guides them to 24-0 for the first 24 games, 39-4 over the first 43 games. Steve Kerr comes back in, coaches the last 39 games, goes 34-5, and somehow, some way is named the coach of the year. Meanwhile, Steph Curry, on far many occasions, shows that there are no plays that are actually taking place when he exhibits his heroics. I'm not saying that Steve Kerr doesn't coach, draw plays or anything like that, but we've seen breakdowns on many occasions. We've seen competition, opponents acknowledge that the man excels, meaning Steph Curry, because he takes bad shots. Well, why are they bad shots? Because there's somebody in his face. There's somebody that's there to contest what he's doing, and somehow, some way, because of his marksmanship, he makes the shot, and somehow, some way, we're ballyhooing Steve Kerr as the second coming. Well, there's a lot of coaches that would win championships if they had a player like Steph Curry when plays break down or when somebody's in his face and just making miraculous shots. So much so that even Steve Kerr jokes about it. When Steph Curry makes miraculous plays, Steve Kerr has been seen in press conferences or mic'd on the bench while talking to Luke Walton. Talk about that's some great coaching, ain't it? Obviously speaking facetiously and joking. And so when you look at it from that perspective, outside of this series, tell me when anybody has insulted or criticized Steve Kerr. Nobody has bothered this man. I'm tired of folks, you know, like yourself, walking around acting like somehow, some way, this guy has been victimized. He was called out because Billy Donovan was coaching his butt off and Steve Kerr wasn't. He showed up last night and did one hell of a job coaching the Golden State Warriors. But for the most part, he's been given a pass. Nobody has bothered Steve Kerr at all. So I really don't know what you're talking about. I really don't.
What I'm talking about is, as I told you 2 days ago, I can't criticize Steve Kerr. I can only applaud Billy Donovan because I couldn't figure out, I couldn't see any glaring weakness in strategy where I say, you got to change that. You got to fix that. So I didn't want to be a hypocrite about it because all of a sudden it looked like Billy Donovan just had the two best players on the floor, and it is hard to deal with those two guys when they are doing what they are capable of doing. The whole Oklahoma City team, it took off, it arrived, it grew up, it found itself, it figured it out right on time. And again, is that Steve Kerr's fault? So I was just saying, show me what he needs to do. Then he showed me last night, that worked. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Well, but wait a minute. Wait a minute, Skip. That's my point. I'm saying if you're going to acknowledge that Billy Donovan is doing something, you're saying, well, give Billy Donovan credit as opposed to Steve Kerr blame.
Yep.
And I'm saying you're giving Billy Donovan credit, but in the process of giving him credit, he too is going up against somebody. If Russell Westbrook drops 36, 11, and 11, we found ourselves talking about Steph Curry, didn't we? If Kevin Durant drops 40 or 50, we'll find ourselves talking about Klay Thompson or Draymond Green or somebody, right? How come we can do that with players, but when a coach is coaching his butt off, we'll ignore the coach he's competing against? That doesn't make any sense. And oh, by the way, just like you pointed out that Steve Kerr stepped up in Game 5 last night, I can make the argument, then why the hell didn't you do it in Games 3 and 4? Why? That's the point. That's what coaching is. So, yeah, he figured it out for one game, and he deserves credit for that. And nobody's trying to take any credit away from this man. He has proven he can coach. Just like in Phoenix, he proved to be a solid executive. And as a player, he's a 5-time champion. We respect Steve Kerr, but that doesn't mean that he's above reproach, that his stuff doesn't stink, that when he passes gas, it's perfume all of a sudden. No, it stinks. Okay? And if Billy Donovan is coaching better than you, then I have a right to sit up there and point that out without it being, surmised or interpreted as, oh, you're blaming Steve Kerr. No. Just like if one player is going up against another player, I will point out the high and the low.
Okay.
I get allowed to do the same thing with coaching.
You do.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with it, but 2 shows ago, obviously we didn't have one yesterday, I thought you were really hard on Steve Kerr. You brought it up repeatedly through the show, and I was okay with it because he deserved to be put on the hot seat. And I told you on the air, I get it. I don't want to be a hypocrite because I don't see the fix. So you kept calling him out and calling him out, and then I thought it was apropos that I start off today's show by saying, well, guess what? He responded last night, and I think you agree, he really responded, right?
He did respond. He did respond. But all that did was validate the criticism that I threw his way after Games 3 and 4. Because why the hell did you do it then? What you waited 2 games for?
You know why?
How come you couldn't have figured it out after 1?
Here's why. They won an NBA record 73 games. And if I may hark back to an old Texas expression used mostly in football, you dance with who brung you, meaning however you got there, however you got that far, you keep doing what you do best. What they do best is the death lineup, the small ball. Nobody could deal with it. And all of a sudden, especially in Oklahoma City, the small ball death lineup was dying. It was getting run off the floor. I don't blame Steve Kerr for saying, I'm going to hang with it until, we're down 3-1. So that was the fix. And he pushed all the right buttons last night with some of his backups. Now, again, it's easier to play backups at home, as you well know. We'll talk about that a little later with Oklahoma City's backups. But my point is, I thought Steve Kerr was masterful last night and saved the day with his strategic changes.
And I'm saying he deserved credit for it, but it also validates why he deserved blame in Games 3 and 4, because it should not have taken him that long. And what you're speaking about is layman's terms. The novice sitting on the outside looking in and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe he should do X, Y, and Z, or maybe he should, you stick with what brung you there, to use your vernacular. The reality is that we're not the coach of the Golden State Warriors. He is. He ain't supposed to be doing what we think he should do. He's supposed to know better than us, which he obviously did last night. I'd also like to remind you that, Skip Bayless, when you covered the Chicago Bulls in the 90s and what have you, I remember a Game 6 with the Chicago Bulls playing against the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, obviously, Phil Jackson had an individual that is universally recognized as the greatest player we've ever seen in Michael Jordan, okay? Michael Jordan owned Clyde Drexler. Michael Jordan was absolutely sensational pretty much in all of the finals. But I remember when Michael Jordan was struggling a little bit in this particular game. I remember when he was on the bench and reserves brought the Chicago Bulls back from a huge deficit against the Portland Trail Blazers before Michael Jordan ultimately came in and finished the deal. But it was after reserves, practically no-name reserves, came in and saved the day. Phil Jackson didn't wait a game or 2 or 3 in order to do that. He coached within the moment. Plenty of coaches coach within the moment. I know that Steve Kerr deserves respect. I'm giving it to him. I know that he's a damn good coach. I'm giving it to him. Only reason I didn't think he was coach of the year was because he only coached 39 games. That's all I was saying.
Okay.
But in the end, don't tell me that I have to handle him with kid gloves and I got to be ultra sensitive. No, Billy Donovan was out coaching him. Okay? Period. He didn't last night.
Nope.
But he did prior to that. That is the fact. Okay. And that is it. And it is what it is. Okay. He's not a kid. Deal with it.
All right. Now, let's deal with Billy Donovan last night. Just like Steve Kerr couldn't make Steph Curry hit shots in games 3 and 4. And by the way, Steph didn't. He only had 3 threes last night. But Billy Donovan couldn't make Durant and Westbrook hit shots last night. Just for the record.
Not at all.
Okay. If we are doling out our criticism or our blame, I thought that Kevin and Russell came out last night and said, we are going to win this game by ourselves. I don't condemn them for that because on the road, it usually requires that your star or your 2 stars do it by themselves because, as we know, traditionally, the role players are less consequential on the road. They shrink. They come up smaller. But last night, man, when they combine those 2 stars to take 59 shots and everybody else takes 32 shots, that's not right. They're going to have to fix that when they go back home. No. Because, listen, Waiters goes 0 for 4. Cantor goes, what, 0 for 1? You know and I know you need to get those people involved if you're going to close this out in 6 games.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they made a mistake about that, no question about it, and that's on Billy Donovan. But the biggest thing that's on Billy Donovan is the fact that they gave up 39 points in the 4th quarter to Golden State. That's not something that happened. Just like I called out Steve Kerr for giving up 38, 45, 42, and 42-point quarters in the series, I'm calling out Billy Donovan for, giving up 39 points. But guess what, Skip? Nobody's going to say anything about that because it's Billy Donovan, and I'm absolutely correct in pointing out that he shouldn't be giving up 39 points in any quarter. Right. But Lord help me if I say that about Steve Kerr. We can't do that about Steve Kerr because we can't touch him. We can't do that. Really? Please.
It will be interesting to see the lineup chess match between these 2 coaches as this series continues. All right, let's move on. After the loss last night, Russell Westbrook was asked whether Steph Curry was an underrated defender. Take a listen.